What's going on, guys? Lars here, Sidewall Jedi. Today we are here at STX headquarters and we are going to string up the brand new Stallion 1K. Today we are going to use STX 9 diamond memory mesh. This is by far my favorite mesh on the market. If there's one mesh I could use for the rest of my life, this is it. So this is a 8-9 diamond piece of mesh. So I'm going to do a 9 diamond top string. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the end of the mesh that has 9 diamonds all the way across, and I'm going to fold it over upon itself. So there's 2 rows sitting on top of one another. So right before I start the top string here, from a little terminology perspective, this is the back of the head, this is the front of the head. This is the back of the mesh, this is the front of the mesh, the part that touches the ball, part that is facing me. I'm going to start my top string off tying off the mesh to this first hole in the sidewall. I'm going to go outside in through the sidewall, front to back through that first hole in the mesh. Remember, that is 2 holes, 2 rows of mesh that are doubled over. And I'm going to do that 2 more times. I'm going to go outside in, front to back through the mesh, pull most of that string through, and then 1 more time, outside in through the plastic, front to back through that hole right there. Make sure everything is nice and tight and the mesh is pulled right there, right up to the plastic. Everything is out of the way. That's how I start off my top string. So for the Stallion 1K, because we're doing a 9 diamond top string and I have 7 top string holes, I'm going to use every single one of them. Do you need to do that every time? No. Do I want to do it for this one? Absolutely I do. So going in this direction, I'm going to go back to front through the next hole of mesh, and I'm going to go front to back through that first hole in the top string. I'm going to bring the tip of the string through this loop that I created right here, and I'm going to make sure that everything is nice and tight. I'm going to hold that tight right there, and then I'm going to go back to front through that same hole in the plastic and bring the tip through that loop that I just created. Get everything nice and tight. Then I'm going to take the tip of the string, I'm going to go front to back through that same hole of mesh that I just went through, and then pull everything over. I'm going to do the same thing through every hole of the mesh and every hole of the plastic going in that direction. Okay, now to finish this top string, I'm going back to front through the last hole in the mesh, inside out, through the first hole in the plastic in the sidewall, and I'm going to repeat that 2 more times. Back to front, inside out. Right now I'm going to just pull everything nice and tight so everything sits where I wanted to sit, and I'll do that 1 more time. Back to front through the mesh, inside out through that hole, pull everything nice and tight, and a double knot to finish it off. Then, keeping the stick where it is, I'm going to pull down on the mesh, make sure that everything is lined up and symmetrical, and there we go. So before we dive into all of the patterns, you're going to go outside in through the next hole of the plastic, and you're going to go front to back through the next row down of mesh. And you're going to do that 2 more times. I'm only going to go through once just to show you, but that's what you're going to do on a typical 10 diamond piece of mesh. Because I'm using a 9 diamond piece of mesh, I'm not going to start off by tying off the mesh to the plastic. I'm just going to go through this hole 2 times and then go from there. For our third pattern of the day, we're going to go with a mid-low pocket in this Stallion 1K. This is going to be for your dodger, your ball carrier, anyone that really likes to cradle one-handed. Okay, to start with this pattern, I've already looped my sidewall string through the second hole in the plastic. Through this next hole in the mesh, I'm going to go back to front through the mesh, outside in through that next hole down in the plastic itself, front to back through that same hole of mesh. Pulling up and down every single time, all the way down to the bottom. Just make sure everything starts tight, stays tight. Back to front through the next hole of mesh, outside in through the next hole in the plastic itself, front to back through that same hole of mesh again. back to front through the next hole of mesh. I'm going to skip the next hole of plastic, outside in through the hole after that, front to back through that same hole in the mesh. Now instead of going through the mesh this time, I'm going to skip one hole here. I'm going to go outside in through that next hole in the plastic. I'm going to make a loop here with my thumb and forefinger. I'm going to pull the string through that loop. I'm going to make sure that the string all the way up to where it already was going through the mesh is very, very tight. Pulling it loose here, coming up, pulling all the way down, making sure that that knot is extremely tight. Now I'm going to go back to front through that next hole of mesh here. I'm going to skip the next hole of the plastic. I'm going to go outside in through the hole after that, make that loop with my thumb and forefinger, pull the tip through, making sure I'm using my right hand here to make sure that the mesh is in the right spot, using my left hand to pull the string as tight as I possibly can, holding it in place, tying that knot nice and tight. I'm going to go back to front through that next hole of the mesh, next hole down in the plastic, outside in, thumb and forefinger creates that loop. I pull the string through here, pulling that string nice and tight. I'm going to go back to front through the next hole of mesh, and I'm going to do that one more time, back to front through the next hole of mesh. So I'm going to go through two right there, making sure the mesh is sitting right where I want it on the plastic. Outside in through the next hole down in the plastic itself. Thumb and forefinger create that loop, pull the string through, make sure that everything is nice and tight. Back to front through the next hole of mesh, outside in through the next sidewall hole. Thumb and forefinger pull the string through that loop, make sure everything is nice and tight. Pull it down, back to front through that next hole of mesh, outside in through the next hole in the plastic. Pull the tip through that loop with a thumb and forefinger. Pull tight. And one more time, back to front through the mesh. Only this time, to finish off the sidewall, we're going to go inside out through that next hole in the plastic. And then we're going to do it one more time, pulling it tight, and then finishing that sidewall off with a knot at the bottom. So in this case, for the bottom string, I'm going to go outside in through the very last hole in the sidewall on this side, and I'm going to go inside out through the first bottom string hole over here. Now I'm going to run the bottom string horizontally across the last row that I went through with the sidewall itself. I'm not going to use the hole that I already went through for the sidewall. I'm going to go to the next one in. I'm going to go front to back through that hole, and I'm going to weave through the next three holes. So back to front, front to back, and then back to front here. I'm going to pull that through a little bit. And now I'm going to go outside in through the third bottom string hole right here, skipping the second one, but now I'm going to go inside out through the second one, coming back. Now I'm going to pull that a little tight, doesn't have to be too tight, but now I am going to go front to back through that same hole I just went through again. I'm going to weave through the next three holes, back to front, front to back, and back to front one more time. I'm going to go outside in through the fourth bottom string hole here, and then finish by going inside out through the last sidewall hole on this side of the head itself. Finish off, I'll just tie a knot like that. Might not be where I leave it at the end, but now it is time to pound the pocket. So if there's one thing you take away from this video, it's that you have to pound your pockets after you string them. It takes about 30 seconds to break in a piece of mesh. Not days, not weeks, 30 seconds. What works best for me? I use the round end of a wooden baseball bat. It doesn't have to be what you use, but it's what works best for me. And there we go. That is our mid-low pocket pattern in our Stallion 1K. Next step, put some shooters in there and then go hit the wall. Okay, for our mid-low pocket in the Stallion 1K, we're gonna set up our shooters. The way that I like to try and figure it out, make sure is I will find this top center hole right here and I'll count down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7's just about as low as I think I can go. So I think I'm gonna put my shooter in 6. I think I'm gonna do 2 nylons in the 3rd and 4th row and then the shooter across in the 6th. So here we go, starting at, so 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna bring my nylon through the actual structure of the sidewall itself. I'm going to pull it through that first hole, and then I'm going to weave it all the way across. So once I finish, I'm just going to pull everything through over here on this side, but I'm not going to tie anything off. So in this case, I'm going to do 2 nylons in adjacent rows. Same thing, I'm pulling the nylon through the actual sidewall structure itself. Pull it through that first hole right there and then weave again all the way across. Pull that all the way through. Then we're going to skip the next row before we put in the actual shooter itself. Just like the other 2, pulling it actually through the structure of the sidewall itself. Bringing those 2 through that first hole, pulling it all the way through, making sure it's all lined up, and then weaving all the way across that way. Now I'm going to use the back of my hand to just kind of feel how the ball is going to come out there. Make sure everything is just about as tight as it should be. I think there are going to be a lot of players that really like this setup with the 2 nylons that are right next to each other. Skip, and then you have the actual shooter. Do you need to have this pocket to have this shooter set up? No. You can put this shooter set up in just about any pocket that you use. I just thought it would work really well for this stick right here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tie these off. It's a little overhand knot, so I'm going to bring 2 of these strings together. I use this knot tying off on all of my shooters because I have found that it comes undone the least. There's nothing more that I can say about it. So it's the same kind of knot that I use to start and finish all of my top strings and sidewalls. I'm just going to do one of these, the same thing for the second shooter. Notice it's not tight all the way to the plastic. I do want it to be a little bit loose. I'll put them together, I tie a knot right there, pull it tight, not too close to the plastic. And the same exact thing for the shooter. I'm going to lay the 2 shooters right on top of each other, tie that knot, pull it tight, run my hand through it one more time just to make sure that it feels the way that I want, and now it's time to go hit the wall. I just can't get over it. I cannot get over how good this mid-low pocket came out in the new Stallion 1K. I love it. I think you're gonna love it. I know how much I love it on the wall, and I absolutely cannot wait to see it out there on the field. If you have any questions about this pattern or any of the others that we've done, please leave them in the comments below. For more content from me, Sidewall Jedi, and STX, like and subscribe. See you in the next video.